All right. This is like episode 6.
That sounds right.
Does that
Yeah,
sound right?
I think so.
I can't count that high. So this is a big request. If you're hearing some odd noises, it's because we're letting Finn participate, our dog, at least in being in the room with us. Finn is licking my lips as I'm talking. He's
Already regretting this.
very excited that we're home. This also may be a little bit off. Like the vibes may be a little different for this pod because we just got back from Woodinville, all the wineries, and might have had a cocktail or two.
Might have.
I had a little had a good day, feeling good,
Yeah.
and thought, you know what? Let's talk about being parents of disabled children. Let's do that.
Let's do that.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are set to actually continue our chronology. Last we left everybody on the chronological scale. We were Nate had just gone to school. We gone through special ed and back to gen ed and all that stuff. But there's kind of a few things that I think we need to cover before we really take the next chronological step that kind of overlap with the stories that we've told up until now. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I agree. Like we kind of breezed quickly through kindergarten through 5th grade, and there were a lot of things that actually happened during that time, and I think are important to explore before we go any further.
All right. So I think there's 3 of them. Check me on these. One of them is meds and medication and the conversations we had, the role that it played, that kind of thing. There was another one. What was the second one?
Second one was advocacy. We talked a lot about how we fought for this and we fought for that, but I want to talk about how we were like what that is and what that feels like to do that fight.
Okay. And then the third thing was, what was it?
The third thing was him getting his autism diagnosis.
The diagnosis.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Of course. So meds, advocacy, diagnosis.
Yeah.
That is episode 6 of
Yeah.
the Nemhaus podcast. I'm Brian Nemhauser, by the way.
And this is Rachel Nemhauser.
We're so happy to have you back. Our pets are currently in some sort of battle royale. We may have to intervene. For now, it's working out, but just know that we are distracted. So, before I get into the details, I do just want to remind folks, we're actually seeing a lot of nice growth at patreon.com/Nemhaus. A lot of people signing up as free members, which is super encouraged. Some folks signing up as paid members, which is really cool. If you don't know, any proceeds we make from this podcast, we will donate to a charity, which we'll let you know once we have enough money to make it worth donating. But in any event, it's great to have people signed up as free members, and people start commenting, and so we're gonna keep doing that. A little bit later, we are going to share a bit of a message that we received from a listener, and we want to encourage other folks to share their stories. So really quickly, before we get into our whole pod, if you have a story of your own and you want to add it to ours, if you have a new thought or a question or just a kudos, whatever that you want to share, record a voice memo on your phone and send it to Brian, BRIAN, at Nemhaus, NEMHOUSE.com. You could send it to Rachel at nemhaus.com as well. That works. We confirmed it. And we will play some of those voice messages on future podcasts. So I think it's a fun way. We think it's a fun way to kind of bring the community into the show and not have it just be about our stories. So consider doing that. All right. And help me remember to read that.
I'm going to do my best.
Do your best.
Okay.
Do your best. Okay. So let's talk meds first.
Okay.
Like meds. I wonder, this because you are dealing with this all the time. I get the impression meds tend to fall along gender lines or along like dad, mom boundary lines. Dads seem to be predictable in how they think about meds for their kids, and moms tend to be predictable. Am I crazy, or is that somewhat accurate?
I mean, I have no actual scientific data that says
disappointing.
I'm sorry, but my experience with talking to families, what I hear often is mom feeling like, I really think we need to be exploring medication, and dad being uncomfortable with it. Sometimes it's the opposite. And so, I mean, a more general way to say it is oftentimes there's one parent who's ready to make that exploration and one parent who's not there yet or is never going to get there.
What do you commonly hear as the reasons for why there's hesitation and why there is like why are the sides the way they are?
Before we do that, I think it might be helpful to clarify what we're talking about when we talk about meds.
Go for it.
So there is no medication that's prescribed to treat autism, or so wanted to say that, but there are some medications that can treat some of the other symptoms that are common for autistic people, such as in Nate's case, like having ADHD and having an anxiety disorder. So the medication we're talking about is medications that sort of support his mental health and behavioral health. And as we've said all along, like, we want to be really respectful of his privacy, but those diagnoses are his diagnoses, and we have explored medication and found it to be really helpful in our case. So you're going back to your question of what? Oh, wait, what was your question?
I was so glad you remember, because I forgot my question. My question was, what are the typical reasons why people tend, from what you recall, why people object to it versus why people want it?
Well, I can talk about our experience. Like, by the time Nate was 3 and 4 years old, his like hyperactivity and his challenging behavior and his like erratic mood made keeping him safe and keeping him happy and keeping our house standing to be really challenging. And all of the behavioral strategies we were trying and all of the therapies we were doing were helping in some ways, but we're not helping with that. And we ended up looking into whether medication would be appropriate, I think, because we ran out of other ideas. And I think that's what happens for a lot of people. I think for many people, there's also a recognition in their kids, maybe of their own. Like, I have an anxiety disorder and I can see that my child is feeling like I'm feeling, and medication is the only thing that helps. So I think there's that sometimes too. But in our case, I think it was because we didn't know what else to do at that point.
Well, so I think I can I'll represent as best I remember my feelings about it. I had been pretty concerned about medication in both of our kids, but like um generally I believed in this notion of medicating your behavior issues means that you're not treating the behavior issues, you're not giving yourself an opportunity to like naturally organically be able to handle these issues, and you become dependent on these medications. And I didn't want to sign our kids up, we'll just like stick with Nate, but I didn't want to sign our kid up for a lifetime dependency on a medication in order to function in society, and wanted to make sure we also weren't taking the quote easy way out. Not that there was any easy way out, but that we weren't shirking our duties as parents to say like, no, we actually, it's harder, but that just means we've got more work to do. It doesn't mean that we get like a get out of jail free card. And so I felt like it would mask some of the challenges and keep us from actually facing some of those and helping him to work through it. And I could say all that now and it all checks. Like, I'm like, yeah, Brian, that all makes great sense. Then it was like, let's face reality. This kid is emptying bags of flour in our kitchen on the floor. He is like bouncing off the walls. We need help. And I was willing to try these things. And when we first started some of the meds, like for Nate, I think, I don't remember if it was Adderall first or uh, what's the other one?
Like the ADHD. Oh, yeah. I don't know. It
Whatever
doesn't
the
matter.
other one is.
Yeah.
but then that didn't work. It actually somehow made it worse. We had to experiment for a while to
Yeah.
find it. But when we found the right combination, it was night and day
Yep.
for us as a family
Mm-hmm.
to be able to function.
Yeah, it was. And I like you talked about why you ultimately felt comfortable with it, and it was a lot of like the chaos side of things. I would also add, I mean, all that is true. And I would also say on top of that, like it became really clear to me he wasn't comfortable in his own skin. Like not that there was pain, but I could tell like it was
He was
he was
dysregulated.
dysregulated. That's a great way to say it. And he was irritable and he was getting more aggressive and like he wasn't feeling his best. And we are not here to tell people to advise on medication.
No.
That is like way outside our
No.
expertise. But I think I am glad we're sharing. We wanted to share this because we know a lot of parents are in that situation where they feel like they're running out of options, but they maybe one or both don't feel ready to look at meds, and it's tricky when as two people in a couple you don't agree on what to do to move forward. And for us, deciding on medication was a really big deal, and it actually, I agree with you. Like I think it was one of the biggest saviors we had for our
It was
family.
huge. And the other factor for me, not early, but like through school, was it was critical for him to be able to be on task at school and have a chance to learn or participate. Like his ability to actually be a productive part of a classroom eventually was pretty dependent on his medication
Mm-hmm.
situation. And so then it becomes a conversation of like, okay, yes, all those things I said at the beginning, I still think ideally are, you're dealing with it and managing it and working through it naturally, not depending on a medication. But then are you doing that to the point that you are robbing your child of having the opportunity to learn and socialize and
Mm-hmm.
the other things? And so it's a trade-off. And again, I agree with everything you said that this is not to say you should or you shouldn't. The point of this is I was pretty staunchly opposed and found it to be a pretty critical aspect. And even now, when I go, like, also Nate's a redhead, and I don't know if people know this, but a lot of redheads have like weird
High
high
tolerances for
tolerance for
medication.
medications. So like I'll go to the pharmacist and they'll be like, "Are you sure like your kid's supposed to be able to take this much medication?" And I'm like, "Yes." And in fact, I invite you to experience him without taking this much medication. But that was the main thing about the medication, was just that like I think there was other parts of it because initially it was the ADHD, but there's other things that we needed to start being aware of and treating. Like I think maybe a little later we'll talk about the separation anxiety that developed later in life for him, his unwillingness to leave, or like agoraphobia kind of
Mm-hmm.
like being unwilling to leave the house and that kind of stuff, and other medications. So I have still a complicated relationship with medication situation, but it has been fundamental.
Yeah, and I actually don't at this point have a complicated relationship with it. I don't have shame in that I have to take medication to manage my own mental health, and I don't have shame that he does. Like it's not like, oh, we're giving in and doing it. There's nothing it to me there's no like value associated. It's not good or bad. It's like what his body needs so he can feel good and have a big broad wide world and be safe and happy and comfortable. So I don't have a complicated relationship with it at this point, other than that it's so inconvenient to have to go to the pharmacy every month. But that's my most
Hey, we
complicated
finally
part.
got mail order working. So I mean, that's pretty cool.
That is.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about the advocacy piece. And could you take lead here? Because I think this is something you've got a story to tell, maybe even more so than I do.
Yeah, sure. So I was reflecting after our last after that 2 episodes ago when we sort of breezed through Nate's special ed experience. And at one point I noticed I had said, so we fought for X, Y, and Z and we fought really hard and we got it. And it made it sound like it was so easy and that it came naturally. And I thought that was just doing a disservice to the story and to people who might be experiencing the need to advocate for their kids, because I did not start out this as my kids' parents with an ability to fight and advocate for things. Like, I mean, I guess I did have that all along, but I didn't know it. And so that's what I wanted to sort of take a few minutes to explore.
What would be the best place to start? Like, what's the genesis moment for you on that journey?
Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, I think in a way my entire journey as a advocate started at a meeting where you were at. We wanted Nate to qualify for the summer school program. He was 4, and they told us he could not because only kids with autism would qualify for that program. And I said, that doesn't sound fair. And they were like, well, that's the rule. And you have to talk to the superintendent if you don't like it. So I did, and was told that actually that wasn't the rule. And so I kind of found out either they had lied to me or they had told me something mistakenly, but they were wrong. And I had to get the whole team back together again. And I made photocopies of what the law was and highlighted the important relevant sections and collated and stapled and like handed them out to people. And I was so terrified. And so like my recollection at that moment was not feeling empowered, not feeling confident, but feeling like way out of my league. Like in those days, everything was in person, sitting at a conference room. I didn't have a professional life where I had sat at a lot of conference room tables, certainly didn't speak up at conference rooms. I was still like maybe 30 at this point, or a few years older than that. And, but anyway, I remember advocating and actually getting what we wanted at the end of the day. And, that did light a fire.
How did that feel?
Am I allowed to swear here?
Sure.
Felt fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Excuse my language, but it really did. Like, it felt so good to overcome my fear a little bit at that moment and get what he needed and what he's entitled to. And that has been one of my major growth points as Nate's mom, is like, I think people see me now as a person who's been advocating for him for 15, 20 years and think that maybe I was always able to do that, or that was like, I would naturally had that skill set. And I just want to give people some assurance that you can grow that into that. Like, you can find your voice over time, and just to give yourself time for that.
Was this like an IEP meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember distinctly you would dread that your anxiety would go through the roof anticipating these things. It was very stressful for you. You would talk about how hard it was for you to go into each of these meetings and hear all the things that your kid was not doing, not on track for, goals not being met. And then also feeling like there was almost a intimidation factor of you being kind of browbeaten into what you should do or what's reasonable to do or not do, and kind of being a room full of people versus you, as opposed to the way it's supposed to technically kind of be, as like a team that you're a part of, like fashioning the path, like the best individualized, education program.
And now that like we've been doing it for a million years, I feel like a part of the team. I definitely didn't feel like that at the beginning.
I think that's a big thing to just acknowledge for people, is that because there's this power dynamic difference, because there's this education dynamic difference, like these people have been through a bunch of these meetings at this point, a lot of them, and you hadn't. And so it took a while for you to get your feet underneath you, and then to also speak with authority. And some of it, my recollection, Rach, is it wasn't just you started photocopying stuff and knowing the law, which you also did, But it was you relaxing into your power as his parent and his advocate and the person that knew him better than anybody else in that room, and that you weren't going to get pushed around about like what was best for him.
That's true. There was, I mean, I did, and there was power in like in that place. There's also like a lot of pressure to be in a room where everybody's looking to you for the answer. Like, oh, you know him best, all right? Then tell us how to do this. And I sometimes needed, one of the hard parts in those meetings was sometimes having to admit I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And to have to say, like, I know I'm supposed to know him the best, but honestly, I don't know how to get him to do X, Y, or Z. And there was so much, like, there was shame in that. There was embarrassment in that. And it's hard to, that was another learning curve, was like learning to still feel empowered as his mom while asking for help.
Well, I mean, harken back to one of our earlier episodes where we talked about the pre-K thing where they were like, we're going to teach him we're going to potty train him. And we're like, yeah, right. And then they did. So it's like, it is this odd balance of they are meant to be experts and we need to like heed some of their pushes, but at the same time, really be smart about advocating for Nate. And it's a tough balance to strike, but I do just remember you reaching a point where it never got to where you were relaxed about these meetings. At least in the elementary school years.
Definitely not. Maybe in the last couple of years, it's kind of become less pressure.
But I mean, it took, what was that? 6, 7, 8 years?
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to put that in context for people. It's not like you did 1 or 2 of these things and got the hang of it. It was a pretty long journey.
Yeah. It was, and it is. And that's why I wanted to make sure we talked about this, because I thought like breezing over that was just doing such a disservice to the journey and also to anyone else who might be going through it right now and feeling like they don't have a voice. I mean, the feminist in me can go on about how women are told not to be assertive or not to speak up. When you add other elements that weren't the case for us, but like if you are a person of color, if you don't speak English as your first language, like these meetings can be really, really hard.
I mean, the coolest thing for me as like someone who loves you so much and loves like watching the journey you've gone through is not only are you comfortable in these things for Nate now, but sorry, Finn is like freaking out and causing some fun. What, you want to pause?
I thought we might want to put him.
Whatever.
Okay.
So the coolest thing is that not only are you comfortable in these meetings for Nate now, but you attend these as a kind of surrogate advocate for other parents that are going through this. And some of those folks don't have English as their first language. Some of those folks are just new to the process, but you're like the heavy. Like you go in there and you're like, you help other people learn how to advocate. And I think that that is an amazing story arc.
That it is. And I will say going to someone else's IEP meeting is nothing like going to your own kid's IEP meeting. Like it's almost like a completely different experience. And I will also just want to say, like, as standing up for myself professionally, I don't want to go in as the heavy. I want to go in and like bridge communication. But anyway, I could go on about that.
Don't walk away from it.
It is fun to be the heavy once in a while.
You're the badass. I've heard stories. So, yeah, I think that that's a pretty important aspect. What advice would you give, especially the women that are listening that have some of these other natural power dynamic issues? What advice would you give them to maybe shorten that 8-year process that you went through? Yeah,
I think I talked to some parents who are just really afraid they're going to be too demanding and ask for too much. And there's a risk. People can be too demanding. But for those of us who don't tend towards being too demanding, kind of trust that it's okay to ask for the things your kid needs. And also just like trust that time will help. Give it time, keep doing it, keep going, keep practicing. You're going to get more and more comfortable and confident as time goes on. And then the last piece of advice I'll say is the thing that helped me really the most was getting a base level knowledge about how it all works. Just understanding how special ed works took a lot of the emotion out of it. So if you could take a little time to learn the basics, you don't have to learn the law. That is like, I don't even recommend that. That's too big. But learn the basics. And maybe one day we'll talk about that.
Okay. I'm going to take a quick pause, and I want to, before we get to the third thing, which is diagnosis, read this reader email that was sent to us. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this comes to us from a listener whose name's Elizabeth. And the email goes like this. My name is Elizabeth, and I grew up in Seattle, in the Seattle area, but I live in Rome, Italy, with my husband and my 2 boys. My brother shared your podcast with me last week, and I just wanted to reach out and say that so many things about it resonated with me. And I kind of felt like I was finally listening to friends talk about some similar struggles. And for whatever it is worth, it was soothing for me. So thank you. Elizabeth goes on to tell us a lot more about her kid's situation and the challenges of going through this in Rome, where in their medical system, also with the language barrier, the questions are the challenges because it's growing up in a multiple lingual, like a bilingual home, or is it other things that are factoring in? And first of all, Rach, I just think it is so cool. Like the whole reason we started the Nem House podcast is even if there was one person that felt exactly like Elizabeth described, which is like friends out there that get what you're going through, that want you to feel like we got your back and we understand, that we want you to feel like the world's a little bit more welcoming and you're a little less alone. That's really cool.
It is. It is. I feel really good about that.
And the fact that she's all the way in Rome, I mean, if she needs company, I think we might be able to like come out and, really help her out if she needs.
But the fact remains that Nem House has gone international.
It's gone international. It's true. It's true. But before we leave this, I mean, can you imagine going through our experience in another country where English wasn't the first language?
No, I say that to families I work with all the time that are here from other countries trying to navigate our system. Like, I'm so impressed and so inspired by it because it's hard. It would not be an easy thing to do.
It's amazing. Elizabeth, I know you've got kids that are still growing up. They're not fully grown yet. And so you're in the middle of it, and just know that we're thinking about you and totally support you and really, really appreciate your email. And if anyone else has stories they want to share, you can either email us at Brian or Rachel at nemhouse.com and or record a voice memo. Send that to us, attach it. Like there's a voice memo thing on your phone. Record your story, and then we can play some of those as part of it so people can hear you tell your story a little bit, or just your favorite episode, your favorite thing, other things that were on your mind, other questions you have. We'd be happy to have even more, better ways to have listener interaction. So thanks, Elizabeth, for kicking us off. That was really cool. All right, last topic. We're gonna probably move through this faster than we want to, but I think let's at least see how far we get.
Yeah. Okay.
Diagnosis.
Yeah.
We kind of left it as he had not been diagnosed with autism when he went into elementary school.
Yeah, we had tried a couple times. Right. He had what they call a neurodevelopmental evaluation, where they determine, yes, he's developmentally delayed, but they weren't seeing like the hallmark signs at the time for autism. And they did genetic testing. They did a whole bunch of testing. They didn't really find anything except for that he was developmentally delayed. And that was it.
All right. I'm going to botch this so that you can then come in and tell people how it really happened.
Okay. I like that model.
This is common in our relationship. So my recollection is someone was here, like a psychologist or someone was here for some other reason in our house and kind of offered offhand, like, you know, I think he's autistic, or I think I think I would diagnose him as autistic. Is that
Mhm.
something that you guys have ever thought of, or something like that?
Yeah.
That was kind of like offhand, and we had given up on.
Years ago had given up.
Am I close?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, just as a funny side story, what led up to that person being in our house was Nate was, I think about 11 or 12 and swallowed a battery while he was at school, like a little button battery.
Well, we'll pause for a second. So Nate does he's had a thing where he will, what's it called?
Pica.
Pica, where you eat things that aren't food.
Yeah, so he swallowed a battery, and that's really dangerous, obviously. And he ended up in the hospital, and everything worked out, and he was not injured, and it was fine. But it got the attention of his psychiatrist, who made. I had to say to the psychiatrist, we obviously need more help. Like, Nate is doing dangerous things that put his life in danger. So she made a referral to a behavioral clinic that did not do. We had told them, no, you didn't. He's not autistic. So they just like evaluated him behaviorally and prescribed a therapy called ABA therapy. So,
which stands for
applied behavior analysis. We went out and found a clinic that was willing to offer him ABA therapy. And before they could do that, they had to send a doctor of some kind here to do an intake. That's the person. So he was just around 12 years old. I think he had just turned 12 or was about to turn 12. She came here to do the intake evaluation so he could start this therapy. And as she was walking out the door to leave, she sort of casually offhand said, I could make a diagnosis of autism if you want me to. And that was that. After like 12 years of having no diagnosis and no real explanation. And like you said, long ago, stop looking, she just sort of handed it to us.
There are a lot of ways we could take this topic. The first thing that comes to mind for me, and you can take it a totally different direction, was it felt like we belonged and he belonged after he had that diagnosis. Like, for me, the fact, like, it opened up so many doors. It simplified being able to, even to today, being able to say, yeah, my son is autistic. Like,
Mm-hmm. People know what you're talking about.
It has a meaning. It's simple. Obviously it's a very broad thing, but all of a sudden there were therapies open, groups open, other people that were part of a community. And I would have never guessed that there was that much power in a diagnosis.
Yeah.
But for me, that was like a big surprise.
I agree. I had actually really gotten on board with not having a diagnosis. Right. I was like, this is great because then there's no label for Nate. Right. And Nate just is Nate. And nobody's ever going to assume what he does or doesn't need or can or can't do. They have to get to know him to really know what he's all about. And so we do lose that with a diagnosis because people now assume they know. As soon as you say autism, people think they know a lot of things about you. And
right.
That's certainly not true. But I fully agree with you. Like, it was actually such a gift to get that diagnosis for all the reasons you said. And then I want to share another is that because for years and years, everybody had told us, well, I don't know what he does have, but he's not autistic.
Right.
So I didn't ever learn about autism. I never read about it. I didn't get to know other parents. I never got to know autistic people. And once they said he is autistic, there was so much to learn and so many skills to acquire. I started to be able to learn from autistic people. And to me, that has made the hugest difference. I was able to start to learn how to help him feel good in his body, how to kind of understand what he might be experiencing as an autistic person, what the world looks and feels like to him a little bit more, like how to support him, how to keep him comfortable. I feel like all of a sudden at 12, all of that started like rushed into our lives and just made such a difference.
That's amazing to hear, and all like tracks with my recollection. And at the same time, I would also say I don't think it encapsulates him. Like, I don't think that Nate is autistic and that's all that he is. I think that he is more than that, and he is different than that, and he's not as straightforward as that. Not that autism is like so easily defined, but he's still just Nate. But even just the fact that part of what Nate is autistic, and part of what he presents is in that spectrum, has been really a good thing. And it's a kind of like, I would have never guessed that that would have been such a good thing. And um I don't know, Rach, like if he never received that diagnosis, do I think it would have been like awful? I don't think so. Like, I think we would have been fine either way, but it's certainly been nice to have that as kind of a something solid to hold on
Yeah,
to.
I agree. Like, I'll tell you another thing that I've really appreciated. When a person is diagnosed as developmentally delayed, there's like, when you think about what that's saying, it's saying like they're developing, but they're developing slower. So everything becomes about skill acquisition, helping them keep developing, helping them maybe catch up, as we've talked about before. Everything was focused on what he can't do, what we want him to do, what we're hoping he'll do, what he now can do. And when he got this diagnosis of autism, it really was a shift away from that for me, which was such a blessed relief. And I can only imagine it might have been for him too.
Mm-hmm.
And instead the focus was, how do I enter his world? How do I support him so he feels good in his body? And like, I think that has made a huge impact on the tone, on my own well-being, and on the tone in our house, and on how we approach like being Nate's parents and taking care of him. And
It
to
sounds
me, it's
like
been a dramatic difference.
it sounds like you're saying that instead of trying to drag him somewhere, you became more comfortable meeting him where he is.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way to look at it. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I felt that for us.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I mean, that was the main thing for me on the topic of diagnosis, was one, how we kind of backed into it, just when we thought we would never have
Yeah.
that, and two, the kind of benefits of it, which also, hopefully in the inverse, also is clear that there are challenges of not having it. So if you are in a situation where you're not getting a diagnosis, or you have a family member who's got a kid that doesn't get a diagnosis, understand that we've already talked about the isolation that comes with being a parent of a disabled child. When that child also doesn't have a diagnosis, it accentuates that
Yep.
isolation.
It does.
I think.
Do we have time for one more point on this regard?
Why not? We get to choose.
Another great benefit of having that diagnosis was being able to explain it to Nate. You know, I don't always know what he understands of his own disabilities, or like what he makes of his own uniqueness. I really don't know, but I've always wanted to make sure I gave him some information, so that in case he was curious. And I've always said, well, that's just the way you're made, and that's just how you are, and we all have things we have to work on, and blah blah blah. But it was really nice to be able to tell him, you know, we talked to this doctor, and the doctor told us that you have this thing called autism. And I think he appreciated it. I asked, you know, it was a very quick, like, yes and no, back and forth exchange, where I was able to like really succinctly and basically explain what autism what autism is, and how it helps explain some of the challenges he's had. And as an, you know, just a sweet thing, I asked him if that was upsetting to him, and he said no. And I asked him if it made him proud, and he said yes.
Oh,
Yeah, anyway, I think like it helps him understand himself and helps him connect maybe to other autistic people out there.
I was just going to go there really quick, which was that I have seen Nate when we tell him that, yeah, this little boy or this little girl or
This character in a
this
movie.
person has autism, he looks at them and we know the look in his face, which is connection,
Yeah.
like curiosity. And for you to have a child that by definition is unlike, what is considered a typically developing child, for them is isolating. And so when you have something that binds them with other people and that they feel like they have, you know, brethren, brothers and sisters out there that are like them, it helps them find community
Yeah.
and them find like that they have a place in the world. And so yeah, I mean, I don't think I don't think it's like a make or break thing, but there's reasons to continue to push for getting a little bit more clarity about diagnoses. And I think these are some of the kind of maybe unexpected benefits that we wanted to highlight. Anything else, love, before we let these folks get on with their week?
Yeah, I do want to share that, as promised, I started an Instagram account for the Nemhouse Pod. Yeah. So I encourage people to find us there. It's Nemhouse_pod. And we have some clips from some of our previous podcast episodes. And we have a few pictures that we talked about in the last episode. And we'll try to add some more pictures when we can and clips. But right now we literally have 2 followers and one of them is Brian. One of them is Ida. Hey, Ida, thank you for being our one Instagram follower. We love you. But yeah, find us on Nemhouse_pod on Instagram.
And just as an extra incentive, that is Rachel running that. So if you want to be interacting with the better half of this podcast, Instagram's the place to go. Otherwise, you can find us at patreon.com/Nemhouse. Join as members there. And as I said a bunch of times, you can email us at Brian or Rachel at nemhouse.com. We really love you guys. We love that folks are tuning in. We really appreciate you all. We hope that you're getting something from this because Rachel and I are. It's nice for us to have something to build together, and hopefully it's connecting with some of you. And I think we're getting feedback that it is. So we wish you all the best. If you like this episode after we've had a few drinks, then let us know, and we will make sure to make that a bigger part of
to keep having drinks.
the pod in the future. But until next time, I am Brian Nemhauser.
I'm Rachel Nemhauser.
And this has been the 6th episode of the Nemhouse Podcast. Take care, y'all.